Hi, it's Kathy with City Farmhouse Studio. I want to show you some of the stitches and some of the little tips and tricks for how to make the dream of a cardigan pattern. Super easy, nothing too complicated as long as you take it step by step. I'm here to show you every little detail that you need to know on how to knit this cardigan. If you are looking for the pattern instructions, check the description below. There's the Etsy link and the Ribbler link for a digital or a PDF file of the pattern. Check that out if you haven't found the pattern already. So Donut and I are here. He wanted to help me go over this yarn. He's super excited. He's about to take a nap. But I used the cream cotton yarn from Loops and Thread. I got it at Michael's. I've really enjoyed this. The one that I did out of deep teal, this is country blue color, for my personal sweater has really held up. Soft and cozy, pleasantly surprised. So the cream cotton, it is 83% cotton, 13% nylon, and it is a medium 4. They do recommend a US size 10 knitting needle, which actually is what I am using for this. 324 yards in the skein. I did get this for my pattern whenever you do get a buy two, get one free. So that really does help reduce the price. So for the pattern, I am using Susan Bates 10-inch size 10 knitting needles. These worked well for a size 12 kids pattern. Probably nothing too much bigger because on the back, I was getting quite cramped on the needle putting all the stitches on. So if you are making anything larger, I would recommend either larger needles or circulars for that. So for this pattern, I'm going to start on the front right panel. It is going in order as it comes in the pattern. All the pattern sizes from kids to women's have you start with an even number of stitches in a long tail cast on. And to know how much of a tail you need, an easy way is to take the number of cast on stitches divided by 4, because that's your gauge, and that will tell you how many inches wide that front panel is going to be. And then you times it by 3, so approximately 3 times the stitch's length to create 1 stitch. So if that makes sense to you, you just do 3 times. And then I'm going to give a little bit more extra for a tail, and I'll say that's pretty good. And then you start with the slip knot for your first stitch, and then have the tail side go over your thumb, the yarn ball side over your finger, holding the other two strands towards the bottom, coming down, pick up from the outside of the thumb, and then the strand going to your finger, and you pull that through. And that's your first stitch. Well, made your second one considering you have your slip knot. Go from the outside of the thumb over and through, outside of the thumb, the one going to the finger, pull it through. And you continue doing that until you have all of your stitches on your needle. Okay. So there I have my long tail cast on. Now this facing me with the tail to the yarn on the right is going to be my right side of the work. I do not count this cast on edge as a row 1. So now we're going to begin our 2x2 ribbing, and you're going to knit 3 stitches And what that is that whenever, so this is the right side, so whenever it's on your body, it's going to be over here. So this will be towards the center of your body. This will be your 2 knit stitches for your 2x2 knit rib. And this one on the end is going to be what you tie into for your ribbing. And we'll get in, or hem ribbing that goes around the collar. So we'll get into that, but all of them will have one for either a seam that's a knit stitch or one for the ribbing. So now that I got those 2 and the seam, I want to do 2 purls. And then I go back to 2 knits. Purls. You continue this down to the end of the row. Okay, so I'm down to the end of the row with 3 stitches left. I've just completed 2 purls, and I'm going to go ahead and knit those 3 stitches. So this will be the 2 for the pattern and 1 for the seaming. Then I turn, and now you do the reverse that you just did, starting with 3 purl stitches in the knit stitches that you just created. So purl those, so 3, and then I go back to my 2x2. So knits to purls. And again, at the end of the row, the 3 stitches are all purled off. You just want to continue that pattern till you have your number of rows for the rib stitch. Just going to do 2 more. 1 more. And then we'll get into the body of the front panels. Okay, there you can start to see the 2x2 ribbing starting to form. The 3 knit stitches for the end on each side. And now it's just going to tell you to knit in stockinette a certain number of rows, and that just gets you the main body portion of your sweater. And then we'll start covering, so all of these that were purl, you just knit, get in there, okay, it's split. So the knits and the purls, I am just knitting. And then I'll continue in stockinette for the desired number of rows, or if you want, you can measure from where you stop the 2x2, whatever method you prefer. And then I'll show you the neck decrease. Okay, so now I've just knitted a few rows of straight stockinette. You can easily count from your purls how many rows up using the stockinette. You can really tell where the end of the stockinette in the 2x2 rib meet. So you can really easily count your rows. But now I want to start decreasing for my neck edge. And since this is my right side panel, so for me, it's going to be on this side of my body. And I want the decrease going this way around to make a neck opening. So I want my decrease on this side for the right panel. So to do that, you knit 2. You're going to slip the first stitch, knit the next, and slip the next one over. And what that does is the one you've actually knit is going to lay behind the stitch you slipped over. So it'll look like these 3 stitches stay the same course. And then as you knit, the one you decreased just sort of disappears behind that band that comes up. So we'll continue that row, and then you knit another couple of plain rows, and then you just repeat that decrease until you have the correct number of stitches left in work. So I've just knit 1 row of purl, and then let's do that one more time. So knit 2, you're going to slip, knit, slip. And then continue knitting. Once you have the correct number of stitches left after decreasing the required amount, you bind off. And at the end of this row, I'll show you that. Okay, so the bind off that I use for all sections of the garment, even the ribbing, it's very simple once you get the hang of it, but the tricky part is to make it not so tight and not so loose. So your first stitch, you knit off, and then you knit the next one off, and then you take your first stitch on your right needle and pull it over. And this is the tricky part. You want to keep slack in that loop. You don't want to have it too tight. Knit the next loop off the left needle, switch that one over, and you continue going that, knitting 1, slipping it over, knitting 1, slipping it over, knitting 1, that's all you do down the line. And then on your last stitch, make a little bit of a bigger loop so that it doesn't pull through. Cut my yarn, and then take that tail through in there. May have to fiddle some of the stitches to lay right, but there you go. It's a little bit wide, but it's not super tight to where it pulls your knit stitches together, and it really keeps the foundation. For the left panel, the 2x2 rib is the same. The number of rows up is the same for stockinette. And I've gone ahead and knit across till 4 stitches remain. And now I'm going to do the decrease for the left side panel along the neck edge. So this will actually be on the right side of the right edge of the left panel. So for this stitch, you're going to knit 2 together, and you want this stitch to lay in front of this stitch as it decreases for the knit 2. Now how I purl, my stitches lay backwards, so the stitch closest to the needle edge is, or the yarn lies in the back. So I just want to switch them around so that it lays forward. And now I can knit 2 together. Just stick through both of those loops and pull them off. And there you can see where that 3rd stitch from the edge is laying in front of the 4th. And that is your knit 2 together stitch. If you purl correctly, again, you don't have to transfer your needles, but for me, I do. So let's do another row. All right, so another row. There was my decreased stitch from one row before. Had my purls row and then that decrease row. I'm going to get my stitches oriented correctly for a knit 2. You go through both of them, pull through both loops, and that's your decrease. And that is all the stitches you need to know for your front panel. Straight. And there you can see the decreases from those knit 2 togethers. Got a little wide on that last stitch. So that's the left and the right panel. Your back is very similar. You will long tail cast on, again, another even number. It is a different number than your front, because instead of just having 2 halves, you have the full amount. And the rib is just a little bit different. So if this is your edge for your front opening, this edge is going to go into your back panel. So how we had the 2 knit and the 1 for the seam, on your back panel you're going to have 1 for the seam and then your purls to butt up with that. So for the back panel, 1 knits on the edge, and then you start with your purls. All right, and then you knit a straight number rows all the way up and bind off. So fairly straightforward, very similar but not as your front panels. The next section that I have is for the ribbing, and you can do this is all dependent on your preference, what you like to do, whether you want to get your sleeves done and all the bits done before you do the ribbing, or you can do it now. It's up to you. But you do need to have the front 2 panels and the back panel done. I have given you 3 options to do this front ribbing around the neck opening. A lot of that depends on how you like to knit, what equipment you have. Yeah. So the first option is to go ahead and do a long tail cast on for the full number of ribbing that goes all the way from hem around the neck all the way down to the other hem. And then from that you start at the bottom, do 2 knits, 2 purls, 2 knits, and end with 2 knits down here. You do all of your rows, you bind off, and then you'll just sew it on to your panels equally spaced all the way around. So it is essentially a third part of your front body panel and the back panel that you attach separately. The other option is to pick up all the stitches from, you would need to seam the shoulders of the front panels to the back, and then you pick up all of them all the way around. What I prefer is to pick up stitches on each panel individually. One, I only have my little short ones. I prefer the portability of it. I don't want to count that many number around and have 10 left and have to figure it out. Just smaller things for me is my preference. So we want to go through and pick up stitches between that first knit stitch and the second knit stitch. This is also where you would sew all of them on if you did it separate and then attached. To pick up, I always start with the right side facing me, and I insert my hook into the edge between the 2, and just with the tail I pull up a loop. Here we go. And then I go through the next opening. You can really help by finding those bars that go across and go in between the bar and pull up another loop. Now, you will need to pick up less loops than there are rows on your body. The neck should be 1-to-1 stitches for stitches, but for the body, because your row count is 4 stitches to 5 rows, you're going to have more rows. So what I do is pick up 4 stitches, skip 1 stitch, and go to the next and pick one up. And do 4 of those. So that was 2, 3, 4, and then skip 1, and then continue on in that pattern of doing 4 pickups, skip 1 stitch. And that should get you fairly close to what you need. The only thing is we had to adjust how many stitches to pick up based on the number for the pattern repeat. So it may slide here to there, but hopefully that gets you pretty close with that number. So there I've gotten my pickups. I would do that for the front and left side and the front right side. And then I'm going to turn so that I picked up with the front so that this little join lays in the back. It's easier for me to do it that way. But now I need to knit my first 2 stitches because I am down by the hem. And all of them at the hem start with 2 knit stitches on this right side. So I'm on the wrong side. So I need to purl my 2 stitches. And then I go to knit 2. And then purl 2. And then you do this all the way up. All panels will end. That's a little loose because it did not. You can tighten that down. All of them will end with 3 knit stitches up here, which would actually be 3 purl that you make. So 3 knits on the right side of the fabric. And it's all detailed out in the instructions. And that is to enable the, what did I do here? Yeah. To enable the, whenever you seam to your back panel, it starts with that 1 knit, 2 purl on the right side, and then it's going to go to 3 knits. So those 2 knits join, and then you have 2 purl, 2 knit once it's joined. Okay, so let's go a little bit more here. So if you have, it takes a little bit to understand how these all coordinate, but there's always 1 knit stitch extra when there's a seam. Okay, finish up this row. Okay, so there you can start to see how that 2x2 knit starts looking whenever it's attached to your garment edge. Now, whenever you pick up the right side and turn it, your bottom hem is going to be on this edge of the fabric. So what you're going to have to do is start with those 3 knits that would be at your neck, and then you're going to end with your 2 knits down by the hem. So you just have to pay attention to where you're going and what's going on with how all your 2x2s are meeting up and where you need that extra 1 for the hem. So just as before, for the sleeves, we're going to make sure I have my tail, had the long tail cast on my desired number of stitches. That's my tail, that's my working yarn. So we're going to have, again, a seam for the sleeve cuff. So we need that 1 for the seam, 2 for the knit pattern, and then we purl 2. And then we continue on down the line. And then I'm going to end with 2 purls and 1 knit. Again, that last knit stitch is for the seam. So when you sew them together, just like all the other things, you're going to have your 2 knit stitches laid to your 2 purls, and it will look continuous all the way around. So when you turn, I'm going to start with the 1 purl for the edge, and then go into the 2 knits that were the purl for the right side, and continue on down. Okay, so there we have our 2x2 ribbing for the sleeve, ending with the knit stitches for the seaming, 2 knits, 2 purls, 2 knits, 2 purls, ending with the purls. And now it will tell you to go ahead and knit so many straight rows of stockinette. So again, just as before, you just want to knit all of those straight off. Do your desired number of rows. I did put a cuff to cuff dimension, so you can see from one edge of the sleeve all the way across the body to the other edge how long this is. One thing with standards is it's a standard. It's not fit to anyone's specific body. I have long arms. My daughter has short arms. This is a good way to where this line is. If it's too long or too short, this is a good place to add or take away some rows. As you get to the top, you get less options of where you can take away. Now, for the front panel, you had decreases. For your sleeve, you want to increase as you go up to the shoulder. So for the sleeve increases, you're going to knit the first stitch, and then now you want a right leaning increase. So I'm going to go on my next loop on my left needle to the loop below it, so the stitch that it was made into. I'm going to go and pick that stitch up and knit 1 straight into it, and knit the needle, the loop that was above it. So that is my increase, and it will come out to the right of my rows. And then you go out to the other end. You can just continue knitting until 2 stitches remain, and you want a left leaning increase, so the stitch to come out between these 2, leaning that way. So I'm going to knit that stitch and then pick up the stitch below it. So there you can really see I worked into the stitch and I picked up the stitch that I worked into, what it is from. I'm going to knit that. And that's your increase, knit your edge stitch, and then purl across. In the pattern, it tells you how many rows of straight stockinette to work. This varies by garment size. Okay, there you can start seeing I did 3 rows of stockinette after my increase row. And you can see where the increase does not make a hole. And now I'll go ahead and do another increase. But if I was working on the pattern, I would put a stitch marker in between the loop of the stitch that I just made in that row. And then I can count the stitches above it to know, did I do the correct number of stockinette rows before I need to increase again. But now I'm ready to increase. So for the first stitch, I'm going to knit that first edge, pick up the loop underneath the stitch already on my needle, and I'm going to knit into that picked up loop and the original stitch, and then knit across till 2 remain. All right, so I want to knit this stitch and then go back and pick up this stitch to knit my increase into that one. So I'm going to knit and then go back, pick it up, and knit into it, and that's my increase, and then knit. And there we go. So you continue your stockinette rows, your increase rows, till you have the desired number of stitches, and then you go ahead and bind off, make a duplicate, and there you have all your parts to your sweater. I have told you on the front and left panel for the sleeve edge how many rows down, along with how many inches down you need to sew your sleeve onto. So your shoulders, whether it's before or after your edging, sew your sleeves on, and then you sew your body sides up block, and you weave in your ends. You can't forget to weave in your ends. And you got one amazing sweater cardigan. Thanks again for watching. Hope you love this cardigan as much as I have. Be sure to follow us on all social medias: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Ravelry, Ribbler, Facebook, so you never miss out on another great pattern from City Farmhouse Studio. Thanks again. Bye.